Hello everyone, my name is Becky Murray and I'm the founder of One by One. The heart of our organisation is simply to end exploitation of vulnerable people across the world. We do this through restorative care, through educational support and through empowering sustainable living. Now, as some of you might be aware, today, the 18th of October 2021, is Anti-Slavery Day. This is an area that One by One has been working in since launching the Dignity Project in 2015, and then even more so since opening our safe house in Pakistan, where we've rescued over 50 children out of bonded labour in the brick kilns. Well, I wanted to take a few moments of your time today to introduce you to the Right Honourable Karen Bradley. Karen was elected as the home seat for the Staffordshire Moorlands in 2010, and she's been honoured to have served as a minister in a number of departments, including the Cabinet. Now, whilst at the Home Office, she served as the Minister for Modern Slavery and Organised Crime, in which, in her role, she secured the passing of the Modern Slavery Act. This was a landmark piece of legislation that protects people from the evil of slavery today. Well, in February 2020, Karen was proud to be elected as the chair for the House of Commons Procedure Committee, and she's also the co-chair of the Parliamentary Group on Human Trafficking and Modern Slavery, and she's also a trustee of the Human Trafficking Foundation. So who better to invite as our guest today to talk about this hugely important topic? Karen, thank you so much for joining us today. It's an honour to have you.
Hi.
Can you tell us a little bit about your anti-slavery work and why you're so passionate about this subject?
Well, I think you've set out in the introduction, Becky, just the roles I used to have. And that role I had in the Home Office for over 2 years as the Minister with responsibility for the policy areas around modern slavery just showed to me what a difference we can make, but just how big a problem this is. And I think it's that first time that you meet someone who's been a victim of modern slavery, who has gone through the process of acknowledging that they were a victim of slavery, and you see that there are things we can do to help them and to stop other people becoming victims, that you realise that this is something that you have to be involved in. This is an area of work that you cannot ignore. And I know everybody who goes through a similar process that I went through and have similar experiences comes out at the other side just determined to tackle this and being absolutely passionate about this area. I'm so lucky really that I do have a platform in Parliament and that I do have the honour of co-chairing the all-party parliamentary group, and that means that we do get to continue the work in this area, supporting the government but also the global efforts, because we can't tackle this problem alone. 40 million or so people victims of slavery around the world. We cannot tackle this alone.
I agree. So what does slavery look like in 2021? So, for example, in Pakistan, our organisation One by One has been working with children who are currently slaves in brick factories. And we've managed to pull some out of the brick kilns, but there are thousands more still trapped in slavery. So can you tell us some of the impacts of slavery, both here in the UK, but also globally?
So, I think the first thing to say is slavery is a global problem, and slavery is happening everywhere. And slavery could be happening on your street, it can be happening in your town, it can be happening in places that you visit. You may find that somebody who serves you in a shop or something like that, actually, or restaurant, actually isn't there through their own choice. They have been made to be there. And what lots of people said, why do you call this modern slavery and not human trafficking? Well, in the UK, we think of human trafficking as the moving of people. Well, actually, it's slavery. It is holding people, forcing people to do something against their will for financial gain. The slave masters are making money out of people in the same way they might be making money out of drugs and firearms and all sorts of other racketeering, fraud, etc. They are making money out of people. So people are in forced labour, and you talk about the children in the brick kilns in Pakistan. That alone should make everybody realise that we've got to have an ethical approach to what we buy and how we deal with this thing, because the very idea that anybody's child ends up being forced to work in a brick kiln with all those health problems and the dangerous situation, it's just awful. And then we have people in forced labour around the world. I mean, there's estimated to be about 25 million people who are in forced labour. So this is people who are being made to work against their will, producing goods that you and I might buy on from shops, through the internet, that we are fostering that trade. And then there's about another 15 million people who are victims of modern slavery, from perhaps sexual abuse, domestic abuse. So this might be people who are being forced to live in a home of another family and forced to work against their will with no pay. This is such a pervasive and large problem, and it is happening absolutely everywhere.
Absolutely. So we've covered slightly on bonded labour and a little bit on human trafficking, but what other forms of slavery exist? Because there's many different forms of slavery, is that correct?
Yeah, and slavery is the exploitation of another human being, largely for financial gain. This is what the slave masters are doing. They're making money out of people. It could be somebody who's forced to be a prostitute, and they're being sold. Their bodies are being sold for the financial gain of others. It could be somebody who, we talked about that forced labor. It could be domestic servitude. But slavery is somebody forcing somebody else to do something against their will. So it could be the people who are working on your driveway, or working, mending your roof, or somebody who thinks that they're coming to the UK to be a footballer in the Premier League, and actually they're not coming to be a footballer, they're coming to work in a cannabis factory. There are so many ways, unfortunately, that human beings can abuse other human beings for financial gain, and I think that's the way to think about it. What is it that somebody could do to somebody else that will make money from them? They are making money from people's bodies, from their brains, and from their physical labour, and that is, absolutely the wrong thing to do. Just as it was wrong over 200 years ago, when Wilberforce and others stepped in and said, you cannot treat people in this way, we are all equal. It is still wrong today, but it is still happening.
You're so right. You're absolutely spot on. So what can our listeners do about it? It's such a huge problem. How can we get involved and really make a difference?
So I think the first thing is just think about what you're buying. Are you buying a product that actually could have been made by forced labour? Are you buying something where it might have palm oil in it, which not only is environmentally damaging, but has probably been picked by people, produced by people against their will in forced labour situation? Are you buying chocolate or coffee that might have had forced labour in it? Are you wearing clothes? If you buy something and you think, gosh, that's so cheap, why is it, so cheap? Well, maybe it's so cheap because the people who've made it aren't being paid for the work they've done to make your item of clothing. So we all need to think about this and think really hard. And I would say, look at the modern slavery statement of the business that you're dealing with. Does that modern slavery statement, which is on their website, every business, a large business in the UK, has to produce a modern slavery statement. That was one of the things we introduced in the Modern Slavery Act in 2015. And that statement will explain the work that the company is doing, the business is doing, to find slavery in the supply chains. And are they taking it seriously? Are they making enough effort? And then the other thing is just keep your eyes open. If something doesn't look right, if you think to yourself, oh, hang on a moment, that house down the street, there seems to be lots of people going in and out at odd times. There's the curtains are always drawn. The people who come out from there, particularly perhaps the women, are really guarded and they don't want to interact with me. If they come into the shops that I go to, they don't interact with other people. That maybe at church or wherever you go to worship, you might find there's somebody there who you think this isn't quite right. Now, like with all sorts of hidden crimes and hidden issues, there is nothing wrong in taking an interest. If you have any doubts, you should report it. You can find the Modern Slavery helpline and reporting mechanisms online. Make sure you report it, because I remember years ago meeting somebody who said to me, I did a speech about this sort of stuff. This was back in 2014-15. And came up to me afterwards and said, I'm a bit concerned about the house down my street. It feels to me like some of the things you said might be going on. And a few months later, I bumped into them again, and they said, we reported it, and it was slavery. There was slavery going on in that property. And so we all have a role to play, looking for that thing. We all know what's right and what isn't right. And if you spot something that doesn't look right, raise it with somebody in authority. Perhaps if you're, raise it with your teachers maybe, or raise it with your boss, or raise it with somebody who might be able to do something about it if you don't feel you can do that yourself. But there's also all the reporting mechanisms. You can go to Crime Stoppers, say you can go online and find the way to report it to your local police. There's all sorts of ways you can do it. Don't stand by. Do the right thing and report it, because the worst case that happens is there's nothing wrong going on and everybody's happy, and the best case is you might possibly have saved some people from exploitation.
Absolutely. So I think the take-home message for all of us is every single one of us can do something to help fight modern day slavery. Karen, thank you so much for sharing your experience and insight today on this topic. And thank you also for your continued efforts in standing for justice in this world. And I also just want to take a second to say thank you to you, our viewers today, to everyone who's taken time to tune in. We are so passionate about raising an army of supporters to really believe that we can stop the giant of slavery, that we can really defeat this giant in our lifetime. If you would like more information about the work that we do, specifically in terms of rescuing children out of slavery in Pakistan, then please also visit onebyone.net and get in touch if you want more information. Thank you so much for joining with us. Take care.